So let's talk. It's been a year since the derecho kind of swept through the eastern Iowa and Quad Cities region. How impressive really was this storm compared to what you've seen in your lifetime?
Well, derechos to begin with are kind of the extreme end of the lines of severe thunderstorms that we get around here. So we're talking, like a top 5% event to begin with. And maybe we get one, possibly two a year. But this one, as derechos go, given its strength and its aerial coverage, is the most significant I've seen. We've had one or two that maybe produced locally some damage close to this. There was one, I think, in 2011 up in Tama and Benton County that hit Vinton really hard and took out a bunch of trees in the cities. And then way back in June of 1998, we had a significant one across eastern Iowa into northwest Illinois that hit Iowa City with some 100-mile-an-hour winds and caused a fatality down by Columbus Junction, and then went on into Indiana and Kentucky. So this is definitely the highest end that I've seen personally. And even as we look at events around the country, it's as significant as the highest end derechos that I'm aware of, and maybe even the top nationally. We do know that in terms of economic impact, the damage estimates are about $14 billion, and that makes it the most impactful severe thunderstorm in U.S. history. So both in terms of impact on society and the meteorology, it's at or near the top.
Do you think we were ready for a storm like this, or can you be ready for a storm like this?
Well, our normal severe weather preparations, that is, taking shelter when the warning comes out and whatnot, would work pretty well for an event like this. I think people were surprised by the extent and the magnitude of the damage, and that's not surprising. But I think in terms of preparedness, your standard severe weather preparedness would cover you pretty well on an event like this.
I know the National Weather Service had the severe thunderstorm alerts coming to your phone, working a little bit in advance of the derecho. But now that it's here, how will that benefit communities when these types of storms do come our way again?
Well, and that's anytime we issue a severe thunderstorm warning, that's really one should go in and seek further information and be prepared to take shelter, or if it's imminent, just take shelter immediately. But if you get the wireless emergency alert with a severe thunderstorm, that means we're expecting something that's especially destructive, akin to what we saw with the derecho a year ago. So it's kind of a higher level of alert if you see it across WEA.
And that was it kind of in the works before the derecho, right?
That's right.
I think when people see the pictures and the video of the storm, they associate it with the damage. But as you mentioned, derechos happen more frequently than we probably hear about them. Is that it's not necessarily like 100-year flood, right? Where we only maybe get one of these every 100 years. Would we maybe only see one like this every 100 years, or what's the...
That's a good question. Derechos are kind of rare events, so it's hard to put kind of a statistical frame on the frequency of them, other than like I said, I know we have one or two somewhere in our area or close by to the Quad Cities every year, so they're not unusual. Uh, but certainly this one last year really stands out from the rest.
And does it stand out simply because of the damage?
Yeah, I think both the degree of damage of how significant it was, because we had damage to structures, to actually homes and apartment complexes, and that's pretty rare in severe thunderstorms, but also the spatial extent that it started in western Iowa and all the way across Iowa into northern Illinois, actually spawned several tornadoes in the Chicago area, and then continued on into Indiana before uh, fading in Ohio. Sometimes these derechos, we had one in 2012 that started right here in our area and went all the way to the East Coast and really tore up Ohio pretty good, but hit the DC area as well, and was a big newsmaker when you hit, the nation's capital.
So a derecho, a derecho is a type of severe thunderstorm. Am I understanding right?
Correct.
So how can we best be ready for the next one? Is there anything we could do differently?
Well, I think the big thing is just knowing your severe weather plan, where your safe place goes in the event of a severe thunderstorm or a tornado for that matter. And probably the biggest thing is maintaining awareness of what the weather is for today. Is today going to be a severe weather day? Maybe I got to think about this or not. And then when the warning comes out, take action. I know the natural response, especially amongst us meteorologists, is to go take a look and see what's coming out the window or go outside. But really, if it's right on top of you, you need to take action right away and head to a basement or interior room in the house to best protect yourself. And again, that goes for tornadoes as well as the severe thunderstorms.
One of my last questions for you, and then I'll let you get going here. One of the kind of, I don't want to say it's a rumor, but one of the things that I had heard is the winds from this derecho were equivalent of a small hurricane. Is that true?
Yep, I hate to make the hurricane analogy because hurricanes last for hours upon hours. And while this derecho, the winds did last longer than most derechos, probably the better comparison is the degree of damage that it produced compared to a tornado. And in the Cedar Rapids area, some of the worst damage would be equivalent to an EF2 tornado. In our area down here in the Quad Cities, most of the damage was on the order of an EF1 tornado, especially with the trees and whatnot. So that's probably a better comparison than a hurricane.
Am I missing anything? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that covers it. I appreciate you hitting the preparedness side because there's a perception that severe thunderstorms are not as bad as tornadoes. And potentially that's true. You're never going to get a severe thunderstorm produce the equivalent of an EF3, 4, or 5 tornado. But as you saw in Cedar Rapids, there were folks without power for better than 2 weeks. And I think even down here, I don't know what the longest outage was down here, several days at least, I think. And sometimes we put the severe thunderstorms out for hail primarily, which can be problematic for your car, but it is not quite the same threat for life that wind is. And we've seen here in the Quad Cities over the years that there are groups out there, especially campers or people, you know, with other outdoor activities that are susceptible to death and injury from tree falls. And we were really lucky that that didn't happen down here, because, like I said, we've seen that in the past, and that's a major cause of severe thunderstorm wind-related fatalities is actually the wind blowing trees down and falling on folks or in their cars, or even in rare cases, mobile homes and such.